Good morning.
So on the morning of November 6, 2016, my wife's water broke in spectacular fashion across the floor of our New York City apartment and onto the shoe of my unsuspecting father-in-law. It was shocking, to say the least. When I say it was spectacular, I don't use that hyperbolically. It was like someone dumped a bucket of water across the floor. But we had a plan. We knew what to do. We were going to call an Uber. My wife was going to change her clothes. I was going to grab the bag that we needed for the hospital. We were going to take that Uber, the 15-minute ride across the bridge into Manhattan to Lenox Hill, our hospital on Midtown. Call the Uber, we go downstairs, we get in, we start to drive, and we realize very quickly that November 6, 2016 was also the day of the New York City Marathon. Now, for those of you that don't know, when the New York City Marathon happens, they close all the bridges because people are running across them. Our Uber driver was terrified. Very quickly, he was like, I don't think I'm going to be able to get you there. He sees this woman in active labor in the back seat. He's like, get out of my car. So he says, what I'll do is I'll drive you as close as I can to the subway station where you can get on the subway and take the subway in to the hospital. They also closed the roads on the day of the New York City Marathon, so the closest we could get was 6 blocks from the train. Now, for those of you that don't know, the New York City block, if you have 10 blocks, that's half a mile. So 6 blocks is nearly half a mile that my wife in active labor is hiking as we go to the train. In this part of Queens, the trains are elevated. So that means we had to climb 3 stories of stairs to get to the train platform because New York City doesn't offer elevators on most of these train sites. So we get to the train. On Sundays, the trains run slow, so we waited 20 minutes for a train. We get into the car, we start to go, and no sooner do we get underneath the East River than the sound of the intercom comes on above us and saying, the train is stopped due to train traffic ahead of us, but we continue soon. We continue soon is a nebulous amount of time that could mean anything. We are under a river, my wife is in active labor, and we have no way of fixing any of this. All of a sudden, at the end of the car, the doors open, the doors that go between the cars, the doors open, and this group of young people come in with a boombox. In New York City, there's something called showtime. Have you ever heard of showtime? Showtime is when these people come in and they say, it's showtime! And then they turn on their music and they proceed to do flips and tricks off the ceiling of the car all the way down. I'm looking thinking, oh no. My wife, active labor, you're flipping, you're gonna run in. So I stand up immediately and I say, please, not here. I explain the situation and they graciously decide to go. We wait what seems like forever, finally the train begins to move. We get to the next place where we have to transfer trains, right? Because it's never direct. We have to transfer trains, we get up the stairs and we see a platform filled with people, like sardines, like stacked one on top of the other. Both of us start screaming, I'm having a baby, my wife is having a baby, we gotta get on this train. The people begin to part like the Red Sea, and we make our way to the train, which comes up. The doors open, and the train itself is also just packed. We start to say again, I'm having a baby, my wife is having a baby. This group of men, prompted by their girlfriends, proceed to exit the train. And this group of women usher my wife onto the train and create a semicircle around her. They give her a place to seat, and they stand in a way that protects her from anyone that could come in harm's way. Right? The train stops, we get off, we go upstairs, we cross the street to the hospital, we walk in, the nurse sees me, she takes one look at me and one look at my wife, and she goes, you, over there, fill out the paperwork. You come with me. She grabs a wheelchair, takes my wife off. At this point, it's 1:45 in the afternoon. It has taken us 3 hours to get to the hospital. My wife is nearly 6 centimeters dilated. For those of you that don't know, at 10, the baby's here, right? So we proceed to wait, and wait, And wait, the nurses have been taking bets about when this baby is going to be born, because at 6 centimeters, it's not going to take that long. The baby doesn't come. Finally, about 2 o'clock in the morning, thereabouts, the doctor comes in and says, this baby is not going to be born naturally. We think he's bigger than we expected. Really. So we prepare for an emergency cesarean, which is also not part of the plan. At 2:30 in the morning, we're in the operating room. I hear a nurse say, oh crap, that's a big baby. And then I hear the sound of what can only be described as suction as this baby is pulled out with a... And all of the nurses say, oh crap, that's a big baby. My wife, all 5'1" of her, had given birth to a 10.5-pound child. A bowling ball, literally. It was huge. He was so big we couldn't take him home in newborn clothing. He had to go home in 3-month clothing. After we had an opportunity to sort of rest a little bit and think about it, there were 3 things that came to mind thinking about this story. 1, my wife is an absolute boss. She is so much stronger than I am. 2, if this crazy and chaotic birth story was indeed vacation, my son was going to have a crazy life. And 7 years in, it's true. He is all over the place. He's wonderful, he's precocious, he's funny, he's smart. He loves strange things. His favorite food is raw oysters. Yeah, that's pretty cool, right? I claim that as a personal win. And the other thing that was struck me is that we could never in a million years have done this on our own. It was every person that we met along the way. Those tiny acts of kindness, those generosities allowing us to get from point A to point B, even to the nurses and the doctors and all the people in the hospital and all the nurses that came to see him because they all heard of the really big baby. We could not do it alone. I want you to put a pin in that as I continue on. In January of this year, I was privileged to accompany a small group of Episcopalians and Episcopal Relief and Development staff to Tanzania, where we were visiting with our partner in the Diocese of Central Tanganyika. We were there to visit with our partners, to have some meetings, and also to view the work. The first place that we went was a small village outside of Dodoma, which is the capital of Tanzania. And in this village, we saw 2 different programmatic works. The first was a savings with education group, and the second was a conservation agriculture group. Now, what are those things? A savings with education group is a small group, no more than 25 people, who get together and say, we would like to save money. So they come together, they elect a president who runs the meetings, a treasurer who keeps track of the funds, a box holder who holds the physical box that the money is kept in, and a key holder who's the only person who can open the box that the money is kept in. And they decide that each week we're going to meet and we're going to put a certain amount of money into that box. And at the end of the year, we're going to get the money back that we put in. So you can see how over the course of a year, everyone's putting in the same amount. Everyone has a much larger sum to work with at the end of the year, where they can do things like buy school uniforms, or land, or seeds, or start a business. The other thing that happens is that people are allowed to borrow then from that collective pot of money. They're small loans. They can go to the group and say, okay, we would like to start a business, but I need money to start. Can I borrow money from the group? And the group decides, yes, you can. You can borrow this much money. Here are the terms of repayment. Here's the interest rates. So at the end of the time, you get the money you put in back, plus a share of the interest. But what's really cool about these groups is that they become support groups, if you will. Family, friends that get together and hold each other accountable. If someone gets sick or there's a catastrophic event, they use the money that they've collectively raised to help that family. They support one another. And then at the end of that time, the money that they have raised goes back into their community for the farms and the clothes and the businesses. It's a beautiful picture of people working together to transform their community through the things that they already had. Do you understand that? It's not something that they brought from the outside. It's their money that they save, but their collective funds have an exponential gift to their community. The conservation agriculture piece is also fairly simple. In this part of Tanzania, the rainy season is about 3 months. It used to be 6, now it's 3. So that means the rest of the year is very dry. What happens then when it rains, it's a deluge. This is not a small amount of rain, it's a lot of rain. So it has a tendency to wash away the soil and wash away the plants. So if you're a farmer and you have a crop and the rains come and wash away your crops, what happens? You have nothing. You have nothing. So the conservation agriculture is a simple thing. It says, okay, we are going to clear the land and we're going to put in our cash crop. But then in the empty space, the space in between, we're going to fill it with a cover crop. A cover crop is something that can also be sold, right? High yield. It puts nutrients back in the soil. It doesn't pull nutrients out of the soil. It helps to keep that erosion down. All of those things are benefits and ways of counteracting the weather. But the really cool thing, the thing that I love about this process is that those cover crops keep the weeds away. You have plants that grow at high yield, who produce good nutrients, who make the soil better, and keep the weeds away. When I was preparing this morning, I was thinking about this trip that I took and these things that I learned. And I was reminded of this passage in John that we read about Jesus going into the marketplace. This place that was designed to hold space for God, that was filled with all of the distractions of the marketplace. The temple was where we go to convene with God. But the marketplace had kept us from using that space for its intended purpose. Like those farmers in Tanzania, Jesus pruned the marketplace and returned the temple to a space where God could live and dwell and work. Picking up what I'm putting down so far? One of my favorite theologians is the writer and priest Brinkman, a Cistercian priest. He spent the last years of his life in a leper colony, ministering to folks who were experiencing leprosy. He says, relentless tenderness of Jesus. He talks about that relentless tenderness. Is the thing that fills us up. The thing that teaches us to be tender with one another because Jesus is tender. It's the thing that teaches us first to love ourselves and to see ourselves as having value so that we can love ourselves intensely and freely. But the only way that relentless tenderness of Jesus can minister to our hearts and to our spirits is if we create space for it to work. As we seek to serve Christ in all people, loving our neighbors as ourselves, what happens when we allow that relentless tenderness of Jesus to minister to our hearts, to show us how to love ourselves better? If we love ourselves more, if we see ourselves the way that Jesus sees us, it builds our capacity to love others. And out of that capacity to love others, we can begin to work in our communities in a way that's transformative. Just like the women in the savings group, it comes from within and blesses without. That's the most important tenet of the work of Episcopal development. Our asset-based approach to community development is built on this idea that every person in the community has value, has dreams, can bring something to the table. And every person deserves to be heard, even if they are the most marginalized in their community. I'm thinking about all of this as I think about Lent. I think about the passage in John. What if we take the time to stop, to examine our own hearts, spirits, souls, to identify those places where distractions are filling in that space that's meant for God? What if we take the time to put in a cover crop, something good, that relentless tenderness of Jesus' love that teaches us to love ourselves? And what if the outpouring of that love that we have for ourselves inspires us then to love others greater, to bring the thing that we have from within to without, to bless our community in a way that's transformative and sustainable. Just like I learned with my child, you cannot do it alone. Life is not lived in a vacuum, and it's not something that we can accomplish without the help of others. So my prayer for you this Lent is to do that, to take the time to examine those places where you might have distractions. Allow that empty space to be filled with good seed, to rejuvenate that soil, and to inspire you to look for ways to support the community around you, in this country and in other countries, and your own family. I think you'll be blessed for it. Amen.